Chris Kohler would be a name many Australians are familiar with. Maybe from his Channel 9 news appearances, maybe from his dad's ABC news appearances, or maybe from his short videos on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts, where he calls out companies and their dodgy tactics. Today, I'm speaking to Chris about his new book, How They Get You. Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a show that helps you explore what is possible in the world of investing. My name is Ren, and today I am speaking to Chris Kohler about his new book, How They Get You, and the scams, tactics, and dodgy dealings that he is calling out from across the Australian economy. Be it buy now, pay later, to the big supermarkets, plenty of chat about housing, and some tactics that really make Chris's blood boil. We cover a large range of ways that companies, big and small, try and take more money out of your pocket and what you can do to fight back. If you enjoy this conversation, make sure you pick up Chris's book, How They Get You, and give him a follow on social media. You won't be disappointed. But without any further ado, here is my conversation with Chris Kohler. Chris Kohler, welcome to Equity Mates.
Alex, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, I'm excited. This is the first time I've actually held it in my hands, your new book, How They Get You. So congratulations on the book.
Thank you. Yeah, it's brand new. I mean, not many people have held it in their hands yet.
And I feel even more privileged now. So we're going to talk about the book and how they get us and who they are. But I think to start with, I want to sort of introduce you to people who may not have heard of you. I think in Australia, that's fewer and fewer people these days. But I guess, can you introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, sure. I'm Chris Kohler. I'm a finance journalist by occupation. I'm now the finance editor across the Channel 9 network, a job I've been doing for a while. And more recently, last couple of years, I've been doing more and more on social media, short form videos that have hopefully the kind of at their core information about finance and economics, things like housing and consumer experiences, but hopefully they're a bit satirical and they get a laugh out of people, and that's the aim of the game.
They certainly do, and for some fledgling podcasters who are trying to grow their Instagram account, we certainly look on at envy as you blow past us, but we'll get there. Before what you're doing now, I want to go back, and I'm sure you've got this question before, but your dad, Alan Kohler, notable finance journalist in Australia. So is finance journalism genetic, or what was growing up like, and why did you sort of follow in his footsteps?
Yeah, it's funny. I liked journalism in high school. I liked reading the papers, and English was my favourite subject. Went to uni and studied journalism, went to uni again and got a master's in international relations because I thought I wanted to do foreign correspondence and, the kind of the war zone journalism type of stuff. And I thought to myself, right, that's great because he's a finance journalist and I can be this kind of journalist. Yeah. And he was sort of like, that's great because I don't know about being a finance journalist, He wasn't actively supportive of that. But then, I kept coming back to it. And at that time, it was this odd time right after the GFC where there was a lot of interest in the world of finance, possibly more than there had been before. And as a result of that, the jobs that were going, a lot of them were in financial markets newsrooms for baby journos who were in their early 20s. So I couldn't really get a job covering general news, certainly couldn't get myself overseas, but I could be covering the markets. And so I kind of just started there and continued on. But as for the communication, the relationship with my dad, it's been great. Like, we talk every day and the communication just flows from footy to family life to what's going on the markets and with the banks. It's been great. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. So let's turn to your Instagram. You've become a bit of a cult figure with what you're doing there. I had a look before. You've got about 700,000 followers. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
How did it start? Like, you were building a career in serious newsrooms, talking about finance, which is traditionally a pretty serious topic. I'm sure there was a bit of nerves and maybe some questions early days when you decided Instagram would be the next challenge.
Oh, was there ever nerves? Yeah. I mean, I had been doing social media videos for a really long time, like going back to kind of 2013, 2014. I was doing them in newsrooms on behalf of those newsrooms for The Australian and then at Fairfax. And I was kind of always doing them as a journalist. Down the barrel, here's the information I've figured out, and the same way you do with all journalism, really. And they were kind of going okay. And then about 2 years ago, it was in the middle of the interest rate hiking cycle. Really, we were doing a lot of communicating on that. And I just I thought maybe there's an opportunity here to just, there's so much happening with it. There's so much talk. I'm just doing stories every day about this. Maybe this time I'll do something silly. So I printed out the words Philip Lowe. I sticky taped it to my chest. I put interest rates in the same way on the blind behind me, and I hoiked it up while dancing to Pump Up the Jam. I just I don't know why I did that, but I did it, and I edited it up on my phone, brought it home and showed my wife, and I said, I think I might post this. What do you think? And she's like, oh, it's pretty different, but she's very supportive. She said, go for it. And to my genuine and continuing surprise, it did well. And I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something to be said for, flying a freak flag a little bit.
Yeah.
Being a bit weird, being a bit, be yourself.
Yeah, I love it. I think, finance is traditionally inaccessible and quite dense and jargon-filled, and I think what you've done is brought it to a mass audience, made it fun, made it interesting, all in sort of 60 seconds or less. Are there any particular videos that stand out, over the journey that really resonated with the audience or, got people fired up?
The surprising thing to me a lot of the time is when it gets picked up overseas, because I think I'm talking about an Australian issue or an Australian set of companies doing Australian things. And then all of a sudden there are these people who kind of get in touch from North America or Eastern Europe and say, oh, it's the same way in Canada, it's the same way in Estonia. And you just think,
so we
what?
The system's terrible everywhere.
Yes, that's, I suppose, the cut through there. But it's been really heartening to know that these are topics that do kind of go everywhere and talk to everyone in a way. The stuff I've done about competition has been really interesting because they tend to be the ones that get a lot of views and get a lot of comments. If you just sort of really just talk about 4 big banks, 2 big airlines, 2 big supermarkets. I mean, that's something that everybody deals with. And I think there's a pretty clear line of sight for a lot of people between, mediocre consumer outcomes and not that many providers. So there's a lot of chat there. I mean, 1 or 2 of those, I put out one, and I think there's one I did early days that got a lot of views, and it got me like 60,000 new followers, one video. And I was just like, okay, this is a good topic.
Yeah.
Let's do more of that.
I'm surprised you didn't say housing.
Housing's an enormous one. It's an enduring one. You can come back to that a lot.
Yeah.
I've hit that a lot of times, and I think that because it kind of takes you in so many different avenues. You can talk about the policy issues with it, the intergenerational conversations that come along with it, that whole beautiful supply and demand dynamic that you get to talk about in so many different ways, but in housing it's right there, So yeah, it's one of those ones that I circle back to a lot. I enjoy the conversation.
So to circle back to your dad, have you convinced him to start doing short form skits on his social media?
Yeah, well, on his own, no, but he's more than happy to appear occasionally in my ones, which is lovely. I love it when he does that. He's great because, as you say, he's been a finance journalist for a long time, but he's still very interested in how people want to consume stories. He's worked across, he's been the editor of the Financial Review and The Age, and he's worked at the ABC for many decades. So it's kind of really nice for me to see him go, oh, tell me more about this Instagram stuff. How does that work? Show me the analytics. That's so interesting. I kind of love that he's like that.
Yeah.
It's a great thing, and it's just sort of who he is as a journalist, I guess.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned there consumer outcomes are mediocre, and we've got quite a concentrated market in Australia. I think that's a good segue to the book. For people watching on YouTube, you can see it here. How they get you, and 20 odd ways that we as Australian consumers are got, I guess.
Yeah.
But let's start with the big question. Who are they?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's kind of vague, isn't it? I mean, I suppose it varies chapter by chapter, but the idea really, and of course, a lot of people will be aware that how they get you is kind of a catch cry and has existed for a long time. But the idea is that it is kind of a large institution, a big business, one that can kind of set the rules and dictate the terms, and we as consumers just have to play by those rules and those terms. It sort of changes and varies, but yeah, how they get you, it might be that the bank sets you up with a whole lot of fees and over a pretty crappy term on the mortgage, or a really 0.05% interest rate on your deposits, those sorts of things. I mean, that's the idea of how they get you, is that it's not really up to you. You're just getting got.
Yeah. Because it is interesting. It's like there's such a wide range of people that are getting us in this sense, from the banks, supermarkets, but also it's not just large institutions. It's like, fake reviews and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's like there's like a systemic thing where it's like, I don't know if it's like we're a low trust society or like regulations are too lax, but somehow there's a lot of different actors that find ways to, get an extra dollar or two out of us.
I think you're really right. I think and one of the things I've been really keen on not doing in the book is assigning blame to individuals or small groups of people, because I think the reality is, for a lot of the people who are hopefully reading this book, they're going to be a consumer in most of their lives. But, when they go to work, they put on their work hat, and maybe they do work for a bank, or maybe they do work for, a gambling agency or whatever. It doesn't make them a bad person. It makes them doing their job. I think the issue that I'm taking here is that in our economy, there's all these different incentives playing out, large-scale incentives to operate a certain way, to separate people from their cash in perhaps some dubious ways. And regulators in Australia do a brilliant job. Like, I really am glad to live in Australia, where we have the ACCC and we have ASIC and we have AUSTRAC and we have, things that look into this, and federal courts that prosecute those sorts of wrongdoings. Maybe not for the amount of money that there should be in the fines. But, I think the reality is in our society there are, dodgy incentives flying around, and that is what I'm trying to inspect here.
Yeah. Now, before we get to some of them, I asked before, what was it like trying to pitch an Instagram account and these skits in a quite serious newsroom? I want to know what it was like trying to pitch a book like this to, the Nine team and everyone else, because you call out a lot of large Australian corporates. Probably a lot of them are sponsors on Channel 9. What was the process to actually get this book up and realised?
Look, it went the way that I thought it would, which is that, I'm a journalist. That's a journalism, operation. They were great. They were like, do what you're doing. This is your job. You're a journalist. Have at it, which was great. There was never a question about that.
Since you've started promoting it and you're talking about it now, have any of the companies you call out reached out?
No. Look, they may do that, and I'll have those conversations anytime they want. I've got existing relationships, but as a journalist, you do these stories, and the thing about the book is, it's not an expose. This is not supposed to be revelations upon revelations and investigative journalism. And this is stuff I'm talking about that is pretty well understood. The ACCC's covered it. It's out there. So I find it hard to know exactly what those issues might be.
Yeah, don't sell yourself short. I think it is. Maybe you're not doing investigative journalism, but you're certainly doing explainer journalism very well, and it's certainly shining a light on some things that need to be shone.
Thanks, mate.
So 24 different ways they get you, everything from fake reviews, drip pricing to mortgages and the like. We don't have time to unpack them all, so I thought the way I wanted to approach this is, rather than me deciding where we start, I want to let you decide. Which one makes your blood boil the most?
Oh, geez. Well, that's a good question. So, blood boil and favourite thing to talk about.
We'll take them one at a time. We'll give you a chance to do both. So let's start with blood boil.
Look, gambling.
Gambling?
Gambling apps.
Okay.
I don't like them.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like, if you put me in charge for a day, I'd say everyone with a gambling app had to delete it. People enjoy them, I get that, but what a way to sap some money out of your account. I mean, I think the average, if I quote it in the book, I think it's around $1,200, and that's an average.
That sounds right. Australia, biggest losers in the world.
Huge. It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And we know it, and we walk past that problem a lot.
Yeah.
And I just sort of think it's probably time to stop walking past it and really figure this thing out, because one of the themes in the book is the escalation.
Yeah.
Whether it's inflation, whether it's the marketing of those sorts of apps, whether it's the fees that we pay. The reason I've done the book is because while drip pricing or subscriptions are familiar to people, the last 5 or 10 years has just seen this explosion.
Yeah.
And gambling is a place where I think we're still seeing that.
So for people who want to dig deeper on the gambling point, we're aware gambling is a problem, but are there specific tactics that we see from the gambling industry that really, I guess, hook people or get them coming back that you want to call out?
Well, in the book, I do gambling, and then I break it out into 3 parts. There's lotteries, pokies, and sports betting. And I've looked at those 3 in particular because they do different things, but they effectively are the same in that they keep you coming back despite your losses. So, I mean, lotteries, I think it's really interesting that the game changed in 2018. The way they actually run a lottery changed, and the odds went from about 1 in 76 million to 1 in 135 million. And I think behaviourally, it's amazing to know that did nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
You know, the odds were already that bad.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And what it meant was that you're able to start getting these jackpots of $1 billion. And from a marketing perspective, what could be better than that? So, you know, that was really interesting to kind of look into and sort of think about. Pokies, you know, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think. But, you know, again, Australia's got a big problem there. And then sports betting, I think it's a real shame because Australians love sport. And I think the fact that we love it so much leads a lot of us to think we've got a pretty good chance of analysing what we're seeing in such a way that we're going to win. Yeah. You know, we love it. Like, well, I love our footy, love our cricket. And then the idea that we'll just get peppered with this idea of have a go. I just think it's so disappointing because it takes away from what should be a really nice thing to do. And now it's mixed in with these losses.
Yeah. So that's the one that makes your blood boil the most.
Yeah.
You said you also have a favourite one to talk about. Which one's that?
Housing.
Housing?
Always.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, like, how do you know?
Well, that's good because I've got a number of housing questions, so we can jump there.
Yeah, I love housing.
Well, I pulled a quote from your book to start the housing conversation. Dipping into your super to buy a home, the federal government buying part of the property, first-time buyer grants, property tax concession, whatever idea gets chipped up next, they all seek to make it easier for buyers to afford the expensive thing rather than make it more affordable. That just adds to prices. And I think in that paragraph, you summed up what Bryce and my frustration with all this is. So talk to us about this problem of demand-side policies.
Yeah, so look, it is frustrating. And it's also entirely understandable from a political perspective, which is why it gets even more frustrating because they just want to talk about supply. They want to throw this idea of supply at the housing issue as a sort of a blanket solution. And when I say they, I mean any government. Yeah. I mean, it's really not. This is not a party issue. You ask anyone, that's the one they want to talk about because they've been shown enough times that once you start tweaking with demand side policies, you lose elections. There are too many people. You know, whether it's kind of that usual calculation of about 1/3 of Australians are renters and 2/3 of Australian adults are either paying off a mortgage or own their house outright or home outright. That, I think, it sort of sums it up. You don't want to mess around with negative gearing or capital gains tax exemptions. You don't really want to do anything that's going to stall or, heaven forbid, drive down property prices. And so they talk about supply. And that, I mean, unfortunately, it's lip service because you're not going to hit your supply targets. The supply targets that you talk about aren't necessarily going to change the equation dramatically anyway. And then what you do is you sort of say that people can use other kinds of their money, whether it's superannuation or you can get an exemption on stamp duty or this sort of stuff, which, I mean, of course it's going to drive up prices. I mean, everybody knows that. Yeah. Like, it's a frustrating thing to kind of have to look at all the time, and you hope that you're going to see a big legislative idea come through, but that's never going to happen. Come on.
Well, let's put you on the spot. You know, you said if you were Prime Minister for a day, you'd get everyone to delete their gambling apps. If you were Prime Minister for a day, how would you tackle house prices? You might need more than a day.
No, you wouldn't. You definitely need more than a day. You'd need a couple of decades. But for me, and I talk about this in the section on tolls actually, the tolls chapter for me is actually a housing chapter. It's the 4th hidden housing chapter in the book. Because for me, housing comes down to the movement of people. Like we saw during COVID, the willingness for Australians to leave the capital cities, just get out of there, head for the beach, head for the country, buy a larger property, something that really suits them and that they love. And there was a lot of enjoyment. There was this exodus out of the capital cities, not just one or two, but a lot of them. And then what happened was COVID sort of ended, lockdowns ended, and large businesses decided that they did need people to come back into the office at least a few days a week. And so it became kind of untenable to be able to live there when you still had to be at your desk, even 2 days a week, 8:30, 9 in the morning. And so I kind of started looking at it as it's really about the transport. If you can make it doable to I'm from Melbourne. Let's say that you wanted to live in Bendigo and get into Melbourne in, let's say, 45 minutes or an hour instead of an hour and a half, 2 hours. Well, all of a sudden you change that whole equation in the head. You can live there and get in. And these are places that are established. They've got established properties, established infrastructure, schools, hospitals, things like that that could probably support more people and more construction. And this exists in other capital cities as well. I just think it's got to be about the flow of people. So with that in mind, I mean, if I were in charge for a day, knowing that it wasn't going to do anything in the short term, I'd be trying to set in place some faster rail.
Nice.
These are expensive, incredibly expensive projects. Let me just put that out.
Yeah,
I don't know where we get the money, but if there was a way, I mean, a lot of the policies that we're talking about now are still billions of dollars. If you sort of made it a federal approach to making housing more affordable that doesn't drive down necessarily prices in capital cities, but rather sends them up in other parts of the country, and you're presenting this as a federal, opportunity. Well, I just think that would be something that I'd need to hear. I'd need to see in the comments of this why I'm so wrong.
Yeah. Well, let him know in the comments.
Please, I may be way off. My pricing it may just be astronomical. It cost $1 trillion bajillion dollars.
Well, we got a sign off on the feasibility of a Sydney to Newcastle high-speed rail link last week, but that won't be built until 2039. And that's not assuming any delays. So
and look, I mean, high-speed rail and fast rail are kind of different things. Like, high-speed rail in Japan's going 300 k's an hour, more.
Yeah.
I mean, fast rail doesn't need to go that fast. It just needs to go faster than our plodding trains that we've got now. You know what I mean? Like, and look, I say it with a small understanding of just how complicated and expensive that would be. But my goodness, what an impact it would have.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think any different solution is a good solution because we certainly need it. It's funny you say the political calculus of, a third of Australians rent, a third own their own home outright, and a third are paying off a mortgage. Rough. But, so 2/3 are sort of tied to the house price, have incentives to keep house prices going up.
Yep.
Whereas Australians, every working Australian has superannuation that's largely invested in the stock market.
Yep.
Imagine if the same political incentives were tied to the stock market falling 20%, and all of a sudden you had governments coming out with first stock buyer grants and, deposits to get more leverage to buy stocks.
True.
And the like. Just imagine, it would be so good for equity mates.
Oh my God, yeah, imagine. Imagine the boom, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, probably not something we want. No.
Well, I mean, it'd drive things up.
So we've spoken about house prices, but I think your book goes into a lot more detail. It goes beyond just prices when it comes to how they get you. Two more I want to talk about. We'll take them one by one: mortgages and auctions. Mm-hmm. So let's start with mortgages. How do the banks get us with mortgages?
Look, I think the thing that we do a lot of is comparing interest rates when we talk about mortgages, as we should. That should be kind of very early in the conversation, but I think almost as early as how many fees we're paying. There's a long list at most major institutions, and a lot of them are extremely arbitrary. Document processing fees of $150, monthly fees to have your offset. I've listed a few of them in the book, and I should say, and I've said proudly and loudly in there that they will change, and they change a lot. But there's a lot of them, and I just think one of the things that banks will do is get rid of them if you hassle them about it. But, I just think it should probably be more of the conversation. I mean, the way these banks work is they calculate on the interest rates. They do their calculation, and then they make a whole lot of extra money on the fees that they charge us to get involved and play the game. And the size of these mortgages, I mean, I just think you have to talk about at the root of every other conversation you have about the Australian economy is that the average new mortgage in Australia nationally is $670,000. And I know that there's going to be people going, don't talk about averages, talk about medians. And that's fine. But effectively, it still gets your brain to the same place, which is that mortgages are so enormous now, and we're paying so much to have them, that it's impacting everything else about our ability to spend on other things, discretionary or non-discretionary, as we go through. And that's just kind of becoming bigger as we go along.
So you don't think Trump's 50-year mortgages are going to help here?
Oh God, what a mess. I don't know, 50 years fair income. I mean, it's just such a long time.
We did the maths, and if you look at it, it's like these days at about a 6% interest rate, you're kind of paying your mortgage again in fees. So your $500,000 mortgage, you're paying about $500,000 in fees over 30 years. If you extend it to 50 years, you actually pay double your mortgage in fees.
There you go.
Yeah,
it's a good calculation to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that says it loudly, doesn't it?
Yeah. So for the mortgage holders out there, or the wannabe mortgage holders out there, how do they fight back? How do they make sure they're not getting done when it comes to getting the mortgage?
Yeah, well, so I said that it's too much, that it's overdone just to look at the interest rate. But you should do that, right?
It's a good starting point. Yeah,
let's do that still.
Yeah.
Like, don't let me talk you out of that. So you want to get on a better interest rate, and you certainly don't need to be with one of the big four banks. I mean, they've got, 3/4 of the whole market sewn up. It shouldn't be that way. We've got, close to 100 lenders, I think. In Australia, we've got tons of them. And you've got a wide selection. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is have a really good look and figure out what fees you're paying, in an ongoing way. And if you are refinancing, see what fees that they want to charge you at the outset as well. And then, drive a harder bargain. They will get rid of a lot of those fees if you tell them to. So I think keeping it as simple as possible. It's do a comparison as often as you can, and drive a hard bargain on the fees.
Yeah, as I was reading the book, I was kind of doing a mental checklist in my head of like the behaviors that we should be embodying, and one of them that sort of comes over and over again is like, don't be passive, be active, like constantly be checking if you've got a better option. Otherwise, you're going to be subject to the loyalty tax and all of that stuff. And so I think this is a classic example. It's
true. I mean, it's an unfortunate truth, and I wish it wasn't like that, because it's a pain in the behind, and we're all busy, and you got families, you got things to do. I mean, how often do you really want to ruin your day by calling up your telco, and just having a go at them about how much they're charging you? I mean, it sucks that it has to be done, but it is the way we're in it. That's the only thing that you can do, is to be really active and to be a squeaky wheel.
Yeah. Now let's go to auctions, because one thing that surprised me when I learnt it was that auctions aren't a universal way to sell houses. It's Australia just does it this way.
Weird, isn't it?
So how do they get us with auctions?
Auctions, yeah. Well, they're a beautiful thing because they get everyone there. They create urgency. Supply and demand. There's one thing. There's a whole lot of people that want it. If you're running a good campaign as a real estate agent, a lot of them will want you to head in the direction of an auction. I think one of the really disappointing things about auctions is that, the reserve is often so different from what has been advertised as the guide price. And that's a very difficult thing to change legislatively. Look, I think the hardest part is being, particularly a young person, and going along when you've seen that there's a house with or any kind of property with it, let's say $600,000 next to it, and then you are what I call auction fodder. You're the one who's bidding it up to that level, and then all of a sudden somebody else comes in over the top, and they're the ones that are going to buy it. And the agent wants you there because you're going to be doing that early bidding that they want. So I think auctions can be very cruel, and I've been covering auctions for a long time. As part of the job, I used to go around on Saturdays to 3 auctions a day and just go and watch with a camera. And I recognise that not everyone wanted me to be there because it's an emotional time, but it's just a lot of the time there were people crying afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard. And the thing that the book was able to let me do was look into how they do it elsewhere, and it's, as you say, it's a lot more civilized in other parts of the world.
Well, unfortunately, we're not in other parts of the world. So for someone who wants to buy a house in Australia, is it like we don't really have a choice? We're kind of subject to the seller's whims when it comes to how they want to sell.
You're absolutely right about that. I mean, I think first things first is that there are people who can help you. There are buyers advocates out there. Whether or not I talk about this in the book, whether or not you want to engage one is whether or not you can afford it and whether or not they're charging in the right way, in my opinion. And that is to say that they're not charging a percentage of the final price. They're charging you a pre-prepared and pre-agreed upon set amount of money.
Yeah.
Because I mean, what is that? Like, why is somebody charging you a percentage of the sale price when they're supposedly trying to keep it low.
Yeah. They're meant to
the opposite
negotiate
of
the
the
best
incentive.
price for you, but they get paid more. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's a weird one for me. But so people can help you. And you're right, you don't have a say in that. And I really hope that some of the states where there are big problems with underquoting, as have been uncovered over years of pretty good reporting, you hope that they kind of get onto those. But for me, if you're lobbing up at an auction, the best thing to do is have a strategy going in. Know what your dream price is. And I've talked to buyers advocates about this, and they usually say the same thing. Know what your dream price is, know what your middle number is, and know what your absolute drop-dead final walk-away number is. And if it passes that, get out of there.
Yeah.
It's so hard to get kind of roped back in. The idea of that whole thing that auctioneers tend to say of, it's just a coffee a week. Increasingly, it's not like that.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to cover off on housing? Otherwise, I'll move on. But if you've got more housing stuff, that'll get the YouTube comments going.
Well, there is one more thing.
Okay.
So I call it in the book the apartment fallacy,
Nice.
which is the idea that you get on the property ladder however you can, and that's the best, really the only place you should be thinking as a young person in Australia for building wealth. And I just think it's been a nightmare for a lot of people. You look at the data on the number of apartments that have lost money over a pretty solid period of time, 8 to 10 year hold periods. In Melbourne's CBD, we're talking about 50%, 1 in 2, losing money over that period of time. In Sydney's West, it's more like 1 in 3. In Melbourne, more broadly, 20%. I mean, these are scary numbers for somebody who's putting all their money into a big long-term investment. And I kind of really wrestled with this idea because, on the one hand, if you're doing it just as an investment, just as a wealth creation tool, it's fraught for a lot of reasons, and you could quite easily dollar cost average your way into the share market. You don't have to take on enormous debt. Might be able to build some wealth that way. But on the other hand, if you're buying it to live in, I mean, who am I? Who is anyone to say you shouldn't buy an apartment to live in? I mean, that's power, that's control. That means you don't get thrown out of your investment property, or the rental property, I should say. And so it kind of was there. But I just think a lot of the advice that people in our generation, in our situation, have been given over the years is get into property however you can, get on the property ladder, and it'll take care of you. And I think about all these people who are quietly dealing with a loss on their apartment that they bought 8, 10 years ago. I mean, how's that property ladder worked out for them?
Yeah.
Shocking.
Yeah.
So I think a good hard look into that. And I think one of the things about property, whether it's your bank, whether it's a real estate agent, vendors advocate, buyers advocate, all these people get paid when a property transacts. And so one of the pieces of advice you rarely see is maybe you should do nothing. Maybe you shouldn't buy. You should walk away, have a think about it. Maybe go and have a look at, a long-term investment strategy somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. I feel for a lot of those people who, in good conscience and with what they thought were good intentions, got into a property and it's stuffed up for them.
Yeah. Yeah, it is so hard.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're not going to solve the housing crisis today, so let's pivot to another group that I've kind of bunched together under cognitive biases. I think there's a big theme that sort of repeats through the book is like there are a lot of people out there who are trying to sort of trick you or use tactics to make you think that you're getting a better deal than perhaps you actually are. And some of the examples in the book are Black Friday sales, loyalty programs, shrinkflation. So I guess just generally, what tactics should we be aware of? And then we'll sort of unpack how we can build a stronger mind, I guess.
Yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of this, broadly speaking, comes to marketing and how good it's getting. It's great. Geez, they're good at it.
How well they know us. And
Yeah. I mean, marketing's often talked about as the art form of the 20th century. And I think as we're a quarter of the way through the 21st, it's a bit of a science now. I mean, it's far out. They know when and how, and the social media of it all. Look, I think you're right. It's a lot of the same stuff applied in different ways. If you mentioned a couple there. I've got a bit of a problem with loyalty programs. I think we are members of lots of them, and we get very little out of it. I think the idea of loyalty, broadly speaking, is kind of all backwards, really. Anyway, because if you're a consumer, you want that ability to pick up your business and just go somewhere else without any negative consequences. I mean, if you're building a points balance here, that's going to keep you anchored to them, and that's exactly what those businesses want. And I mean, the ACCC, I think it was 2019 that Rod Sims put out that report that said that a lot of those big supermarket loyalty programs, you're getting about half a cent in the dollar coming back your way. I mean, is it worth the amount of data that you're giving to them? You know, who you are, how you're buying it, what you're buying and when and where. I mean, this is very valuable to a business. And the issue that I've always taken with that is the exchange rate isn't where it should be, you know.
I found it interesting that when Wesfarmers demerged Coles, they wanted to hang on to half of Flybuys.
Yeah.
Like that was the thing that they...
There you go. And I mean, you see how big the loyalty program at Qantas is getting now.
Yeah, what do they call it? A loyalty program that flies planes.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. I mean, the margins in aeroplanes and running an airline is bad. Like, you know, it's a scary thing, and you want something that's much more reliable and you're able to do with what you want. I mean, the terms and conditions in loyalty programs are incredibly long, and they can kind of do what they want with your stuff.
So I guess the counter argument, you know, people are probably, you know, hoarding their Qantas points and thinking, what am I meant to do? Just like not claim the $0.50 reward? Like I may as well claim it rather than not claim it.
Totally get it. I hear this a lot. And I think it's totally valid to say, well, what do you mean? I'm going to the supermarket anyway. You think I have my data? Who am I? What's my data going to do? Like, and I think that's totally valid, and I really hear them. And the thing that I would say is that that's fine that they can have my data, but if you ever change your mind on that, you know, that's going to be very hard to unring that bell. And the problem is, the more places you spread your personal information, the more liability you're taking on, because there are data hacks all the time. We tend to only hear about the big ones, but there are so many medium and small tier data hacks that we just get swept up in and we don't even know. And then what happens, of course, is that information is passed around between criminals. It's sold on the dark web and it's used to target you more directly when somebody wants to scam you, if they choose to. And I personally think that tips it in favour of not being part of the loyalty program. You know, okay, 0.5 cent is something, but they're getting my information. They're getting something valuable, and I'm being assigned the risk, and I just think that's not fair.
So you're not a member of any loyalty programs? Here we go. We get to break some news here.
Geez, you know, I think I might be. I mean, it's hard not to be.
I know. I
think legacy member of a few, definitely member of the airlines. Not a member of the supermarkets, but my wife likes to tap the Flybuys every time, and I'm just like, but I just wrote a book about this. Can you not? It's a bad look. But no, it's hard to escape, and I think what I'm sort of saying is, and this applies pretty much to the whole book, is you can't avoid all of this stuff.
No.
It's impractical to think for a moment that you could, but the average Australian's got, let's say, I think I write it in the book, 10 loyalty programs. In America, it's more like 15. But if you can get that down to 2 to 4, that's probably for the best.
Yeah.
You're not going to miss them.
Yeah.
You know, just really have a good look.
So I think, you know, on that point of not being able to avoid them, how do we train ourselves and our brains to be aware of some of these things? And particularly, you know, you're right about sort of the default bias when it comes to subscriptions, where we just, you know, keep paying and we just struggle to actually cut them. Or Black Friday, we get tricked into the sales price when it may not actually be cheaper. Like, how do you think about I guess, building a mindset of so you can spot some of these things?
Look, I think it's really hard, and I think it works because it's hard and because we're wired in a way that, you know, academics have defined, you know, all these sorts of biases and default settings that you just described. So it's not an easy thing to do, and you're not going to be able to do it all the time. Sometimes you're just going to want to get on with your day. But the more often that you can kind of have your alert set, you know, go beep, 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 the better, you know, like, and really at its core, it's only worth having those sort of alert settings if you've got competition in the market. If you can decide, hey, actually, I don't like what they're doing there, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. I mean, all of these negative and dodgy traits and tactics exist most in the sectors where there is not enough competition.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. Like, you know, if you want to buy tickets to a show, you know, the ticket provider will be able to drip price you because you can't just go to a different provider and buy the same ticket to the same show. Whereas you've got much better choice if you wanted to go and buy a coffee and somebody starts to do something dodgy, you just go, oh, I'll go to the next coffee shop.
Yeah.
And this is why competition becomes this conversation that kind of gets you talking in lots of different ways about how the economy could run more efficiently for people.
Now, I'm mindful that we're taking a lot of your time. There's one more I want to ask you about, and I'll give you a chance if there's any more you want to throw in there. Okay. But one that I'm pretty passionate about, which I want to quote, and for any young ears, cover them for a second.
I think I know where this is going.
Let's talk car loans, and I'm going to start with a quote. Car loans, though, are quite simply fucked.
Yeah.
Talk to us about car loans.
Car loans are fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, look, car loans are expensive. I think the way I've written about it in the book is that for a lot of people, first things first, car loans are part of the deal. You need a car, you got to get around, you got to drop your kids at school, you need to go to the shops, you need to go to work.
To be clear, cars are part of the deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said. I mean, I think
as small a loan as possible is part of the deal.
That's right. I think what you see in the car loan space is not. You see a lot of bad stuff. You see a lot of high interest rates and bad terms, balloon payments and fees, and all these sorts of things. And more people are taking them on. There's a few numbers in the book about how big they're growing. And I think it's really hard because new cars are the more expensive ones. New cars are the safer ones. You want them. I understand that. But the car loans hold us back in ways that we rarely think about. Like I do a bit of a thing in the book where we talk about how much the average person is spending on a car loan. Let's forget, the registration and the cost of keeping it on the road with tolls and the cost of filling it up with fuel, all that sort of stuff. But the car loan is an amount of money that if you took it away from a car and put it into a mortgage, that would be a very big difference. A couple $100,000 on the median,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're now talking about maybe I don't need to live so far away. That means that I need that car. Maybe I am able to live closer into a place that gets me to work on public transport more easily, puts me in a school zone that's kind of better for my family. I just think car loans are a massive amount of money. I mean, it's so often talked about that a car is the second biggest purchase we make, but it's not a purchase anymore. It's a subscription. You kind of have to keep on paying it all the time, and it's so much money every month. It's a painful amount of money, and of course, the thing depreciates, which is the kicker at the end.
That taking out a loan to buy a depreciating asset is
Killer.
crazy. Yeah,
it's murder.
Yeah, I recognise that people need cars to get around. That's just the function of where people live and where their lives are these days. But I'm always reminded by the Morgan Housel quote that spending is the gap between your ego and your income. The fastest way to increase your savings is to increase your humility. And for me, that is a lesson in just get the cheapest possible car that is safe and that runs and that ticks all the boxes. But anything above that is just a function of ego.
I love that quote. That is such a great way of talking about it, because that's the problem with cars, is that it's not just a car, it's a representative of who I am. This is how I'm getting around town, and that's completely understandable because they're cool.
Yeah, they are.
I want them.
They're a status symbol.
I go past these massive Toyota 4-wheel drives and utes, and I think, I want one.
Yeah, that's how they get you.
I have genuinely no business being in one of those cars. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they're cool, and you want them. I mean, but the problem, I think, is after that initial hit of getting the cool thing, it's just a car 6 months later, and the payments, my God, they stick around for a lot longer than that. I just think it's a big problem, and I call it fucked. And I don't call everything in the chat in the book fucked, but I'm pretty happy to stick by car loans being pretty fucked.
Yeah. I reckon it would lose the effect if everything you just said, it's fucked, it's also fucked.
Yeah, well, there was a lively discussion about how many F-bombs should be in a book.
Okay.
What's an appropriate number?
Well, I'm sure some publishers would say 0, but I reckon you can get away with a few these days.
What's interesting?
What's the count?
Penguin Random House, very okay with F-bombs.
Okay.
They weren't trying to pull my punches on that.
Yeah.
There are 6.
6. Okay. All right. Well, that's a fun game for everyone to play. It's like Where's Wally Word Edition?
About 1 every 10,000 words.
Okay. Nice. That's the ratio.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to close by sort of talking about how consumers can fight back. But before then, I want to give you a chance. Is there any categories that we haven't spoken about that you want to chat about?
One of the ones that I had to do a bit of reading on because I'm 36 and I don't do much gaming is the in-game purchasing.
How old are your kids?
4.5 and 10 months.
Okay, I was going to say you could ask them, but probably not quite there yet.
I think we're probably on the way into that. It's a worry, but it's a worry for me, not because they're playing video games, but because the video game are now marketplaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's brutal from what I've read and what I understand now. It's that you're constantly being sold inside these things, and all these tactics that we've already talked about are being used to great effect. Yeah. Clouding what is an actual dollar. No, it's a token. Yeah. Whether or not you're buying what you think you're buying, or you're buying a chance to get what you think you're buying.
It's like gambling. You buy a loot box or something. It's like you get a chance to get this. Yeah.
And this comes back to the core of the book, which is that a lot of this stuff has changed very fast. Legislation can't keep up. No one really knows what's going on in there. A new development, a new innovation in that space takes years before people kind of cotton on, oh, this is a bit like gambling. I don't think we like this. Yeah. So that was one of the ones that I found very interesting to talk about.
I think people struggle to comprehend the scale, like the size of the video game industry.
Totally.
Like video game industry is bigger than the movie and music industry combined.
Yeah.
And recently mobile gaming has overtaken console and PC gaming combined. And
huge.
Like mobile gaming is just, lives off those microtransactions.
The money flowing in is just enormous. I mean, there's got to be something going on in there. And and I think the problem is that, a lot of the older people, our concept of these things is now outdated. And that happens pretty quickly. And we think, like for me, Nintendo 64, Zelda Ocarina of Time, this is the pinnacle of gaming.
You're showing your age there.
I know, and you made me do it. No,
don't worry, I'm almost there as well.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So if somebody talks to me about gaming, that's where my mind goes. Well, geez, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Oh, what, you just bought the game once and then you owned it?
Yeah, what a weird thing. You blew in the cartridge and it worked? What is this weird thing you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, forget that. Even just having a cartridge is now
bizarre.
Confusing. It's all
that you can lose or lend to your mate.
All right, well, let's close by talking about how we can fight back, because I think there is a world where you could write this book and just be cynical and broken afterwards. There's all these ways they get me. What's the point in fighting? So I guess after writing this book, after doing all this work, how are you feeling about your role as a consumer and your opportunity to get some wins?
I'm feeling okay. I wouldn't say that I'm feeling broadly and entirely optimistic. I think there's some chapters where I came away from it going, there's nothing you can really do. What am I going to do? There are others, though, where I think being an active and alert and interested consumer can, affect change to you personally, whether it's superannuation, and make sure that your super fund is, performing well, not charging you too much in fees, and you're in the right designation, that you're in, growth if you're young and you want to be in the growth, or you're in balanced or conservative, that you're kind of at least involved to the point where you can have some control and make it a better situation for yourself. I think that exists in Australia, which is great. There are others, of course, where, as I say, you're not going to be able to do much. But I did come away from it feeling mildly optimistic.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we live in a country that, let's say you look to the ACCC. The ACCC gets a lot of flack, I think. People comment a lot of the time when I reference them or do a story about them, toothless tiger, they don't know what they're doing. I don't think it's true. I think they're doing a great job. I actually think they're first of all, they're pretty well funded at the moment, which is good. They've got a lot of people and they're having a look. Yeah. They're trying, and I think that's the best we can ask for. And not every country gets that.
Yeah.
And then they throw it over to the federal court, and sometimes the fines that we see at the end aren't really what we were hoping, but that's not necessarily ACCC's fault. So I'm optimistic that we as consumers are at least a little bit represented, that we have some control that we can exert ourselves where we can. And that everywhere else, you can do your best, and you can try to find somebody else, and you can do a bit of research. You can ask ChatGPT.
There's probably a whole book, part 2 coming up about how AI companies get us. But
it's probably been written a few times already.
So I guess to talk about the things you can change in your personal life after doing this work, is there anything that you changed in your personal life or your personal finances?
Yep, I did. I had a really good look at my ongoing expenses. I think I trimmed a couple of subscription programs. This isn't world-changing stuff. I think we definitely moved where we were getting our home internet and our energy. Changed that. I stayed with my superannuation fund, but I did a good look at what was out there, and I decided it was okay. So, I mean, that was my approach, is that it's so easy to forget. I mean, I'm in this every day. I'm talking about this all the time, and it takes me having to write a book to sit down and actually force myself into doing it. I really, really recognise that it's unpleasant to have to, look into all these different telcos and figure out which one's right for you. I mean, I've already got one. Leave me alone. Oh, my God. I've got other stuff to worry about. But that's what I would be doing, that sort of stuff.
And then I guess the final question is, like, a lot of these are structural problems. And, earlier in the book, we sort of spoke about how we can think about systemically all these different theys that get us. If we want to think about our collective power politically and where we should be channeling that energy and that focus, if you think about it more structurally and like where you want to see change on a sort of regulatory or structural level, where do you think we should be focusing? Where should we be commenting on Instagram or whatever it is? Yeah. Like, what are the big things?
It's a really good question, because so often you get frustrated and you don't know where to go with that frustration. You don't really know what to do with it. And I think you're right. It does need to be channeled somewhere, and I think it needs to be channeled towards elected representatives who've got power to change laws and to sort of think differently. You can vote in favour of the ones that you like what they're saying about this thing. You can do the opposite with the opposite. And I think that is a really important thing that we should be doing. And I think the younger and the more actively you can be involved in those sorts of things and following what these elected officials are saying, the better. Comment on their Instagram stories and their Instagram posts that are them, talking about something. Just be like, hey, that's interesting. Talk about this thing.
Yeah. But I guess specifically is what should we be talking to politicians about? Is there one burning platform or one big policy change that would make a difference?
Look, I think it's housing. I obviously think, we need to have a very firm and ongoing discussion about housing. I think things like how we market debt, how we allow debt to be sold. I think there's too much crap debt just handed out and marketed.
I mean, we haven't even spoken about buy now, pay later, but you're right about it in the book.
Yeah. That was 10 years. To get that brought into the existing legislation on credit, it was 10 years. That's an incredibly long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that sort of just, it exists. It's absolutely growing. It's swelling. And then legislators can kind of get in and get their hands dirty with it. You're still seeing things like, interest-free for 6 months, no deposit, and then what they're effectively selling you is a 30% interest rate credit card with a 6-month holder period, and they're charging you $66 in fees at the time. There's no reason for that. If you're someone who desperately needs a fridge or a couch, there are ways that you can do that through, there's a whole lot of them, actually. You just Google them. They can help you into no-interest loans and sort of things that are means tested, but, I just think debt is way too free and easily marketed. And I think gambling, for me, I think that we are letting gambling get away with way too much in Australia. So they're, for me, if we're talking about policy changes that I would be going straight at, you'd be housing, debt and gambling.
Yeah. Well, I think underpinning a lot of it is financial literacy, and until they teach it in schools, you'll be teaching it on your Instagram. So people should go and follow Chris. They should also pick up his book, How They Get You, available wherever good books are sold. But Chris, thank you for joining us here on Equity Mates.
Been a pleasure, Alec. Thank you.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Equity.